Okay, I've got my Word document up on the screen, and this is what I'm going to be reading from as I continue this effort to create a digital version, a digital audio version of our book, Prepare What Defendants Need to Know About Before Going to Court, Sentencing, or Prison. But I also want to show the steps that I have to take to create the audio file. I'm going to use a very powerful Adobe file, and this is called Adobe file. So you notice I have them all saved here in this way, and it's really important to categorize. So these are my chapters that I've been doing. I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you look inside, you will see that I have an audition file. There's an MP3 folder. Then there's all the source information right there. So it's important to keep these things categorized well. This is the one that I did yesterday, and so now I am going to create one for today, which is going to be chapter 6. So I'm going to go into chapter 6, Prepare Audio. I'm going to open a new folder. I'm going to title it the same way. So it's going to be 6, that way it stays in order. And this one is called Sentence Mitigation. Okay, and there. Now I have a file, right? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a template, because I created a template so that I don't have to go in there and create this file every single time. Before I save that, I'm going to save this document in this file. So I'll take this and I will save this in the new folder that I just created. So I don't see it showing up here on my Mac. So I'm going to go to find where it is. It looks like I'm going to have to go to the document itself. So I'm going to go to the Seagate drive, which is an external drive, so I don't clog up my computer with this information. I'm going to go to Audio Files. I'm going to go to Prepare Audio, and there is the new folder that I just created. So I'm going to save this in the new folder right there, and this is what is Sentence Mitigation. That's the manuscript page, so it's always going to be in the right place. I'm going to open the template that I created so that I can record in Adobe Audition. This is a subscription service. It's part of the Adobe plan. And I'm going to listen to a little bit right now. Defendants should know about the criminal justice system. So that's the beginning. This is a section here, I know, where it probably says here's chapter 6. So watch how I do this. Chapter 5 follows with a story about post-conviction proceedings. So I'm going to take that out. Use the thing, just remove this, and I'm going to just really record that intro right now and say, in chapter 6, I'll be discussing sentence mitigation plans. That's it. That's that section right there. And so I'm going to leave that. That's going to be like an intro. So the whole intro is recorded here, and I don't have to save it anymore. But now I need to save as. So I'm going to hit Shift Apple S, because I use Apple. And I'm going to make this one, I'm going to title it 6, Sentence Mitigation. And this is the strategy that I have to use every time. So before you do your work, you've got to do your pre-work, okay? That's the pre-work. And I'm going to save that right there. And now it's saved in the appropriate file, and I hit OK. And so you can see there that that is going to be saved in the appropriate file. Watch that name change in just a second. It's copying this music file right there that I used in intro, and now it's saved in the right place. So now I can record. And because I am striving to build my brand and build my authenticity and show the world that I am not somebody who talks about working hard or talks about preparing or talks about being able to help people succeed, I show them how I do it. That's what I would encourage you to do if you are facing challenges. So now I am going to start the podcast. And since I'm reading it, I'm just going to be authentic with it right here. I will cut that section when I start. But I'm going to say, super excited to be back here. No, cut that, right? So I'll cut that so I know to cut it in the audio. And now I'm just going to start reading. And so I'm going to say, glad to be back with the Prison Professors podcast, and we are going to be talking about sentence mitigation plans in Chapter 6. If you haven't heard the previous episodes, you will learn through this book that I am reading. This book is called Prepare What Defendants Need to Know About Sentencing, about court, sentencing, and prison. And if you would like to read the copy, just simply visit prisonprofessors.com or any of our websites, and you can download it for free. Our objective is to try and help people make better decisions if they're going into the criminal justice system, help them understand what they're facing. And so one of the ways that I want to do that, recognizing that people don't always have the opportunity to read, they can now just tune into our podcast and listen to them chapter by chapter, download it. But there's something else that we're doing here by recording this in both audio and video format, is we are giving the search engines of the world, whether it's voice, whether it's print, whether it is visual, an opportunity to see, to get our content and stream it into their media so more people can find us. Because our objective is to help as many people as possible. We need to use technology to help us do that. Certainly our team is investing heavily in technology so that we can reach more people and help more people make better decisions. So now I'm going to continue reading. This is chapter 6. What is a sentence mitigation plan? So let's continue. So when is the right time to think about a sentence mitigation plan? Answering that question reminds me of an old saying about the best time to plant an oak tree. I heard a speaker ask that question to members of his audience. Predictably, audience members ventured a guess. Well, is it best to plant an oak tree in the morning, in the winter, in the summer? Nobody really knew the answer. Nobody really had a clue. So pausing for dramatic effect, the speaker then gave the answer. The best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Now, we could say the same thing about a sentence mitigation plan. Too often, a defendant doesn't do anything to prepare for the sentencing hearing. And it's understandable. Many people don't even think of themselves as criminals, but yet they find themselves as being criminal defendants. Regardless of what type of activity brought those people to the attention of authorities, they think that they're different, immune from the law enforcement proceedings. They may not know anyone who has been through the criminal justice system, and they cannot conceive of themselves as having to go through the system themselves. That was certainly the way that I saw myself when I started this journey. For me, it was back in 1987. I was 23 years old. I'd never been in the system before. And even though I was breaking the law every single day by orchestrating this scheme to transport cocaine from Miami to Seattle and various cities in between, I didn't see myself as a criminal. I saw myself as a son, as a young entrepreneurial, enterprising young man. But obviously, how I saw myself wasn't important at all. And what was important was how did others see me, particularly authorities that were accusing me of a crime that I knew I had committed. In the eyes of the Drug Enforcement Administration, I violated a lot of laws. And I had to be held accountable, and they made me a target for prosecution. And when federal authorities came after me, they put me in the same category or algorithm as everybody else. They saw me as a criminal. And when the federal government chooses to bring an indictment, they get a conviction about 85% of the time. So what are the odds of me being able to make sense of a mitigation plan without really understanding the game that I am playing? Because I'd never been in this situation before, right? It's a Drug Enforcement Administration's agent's job to go after people. It's an FBI agent's job to go after people. It's a U.S. attorney's job to go after people. And that's what they're doing every single day. And so their head is in the game all the time. They're making 100% commitment to get the outcome that they want. And the outcome that they want is a conviction. Well, what do you want? You want the people that are going to judge you to have a better understanding of who you are as a human being. You want the judge, the Bureau of Prisons, the probation officer that's going to supervise your release, even the probation officer who's going to write your pre-sentence investigation report. You want them to look at you in the same way that your parents look at you, that your wife looks at you, that your neighbors look at you. But that's not the way it works. So we have to architect a strategy. We have to come up with a plan that's going to help us overcome many of the challenges that cause or that influence a stakeholder's opinion. We have to think about what can we do with the resources that we have to change perceptions of other people. Now, I'm really speaking extemporaneously here rather than reading word by word from the manuscript or from the book, because I find it to be so important that a person who is listening to this really understands what we're doing. And there's one way to communicate with the written word. There's another way to communicate with the spoken word. And right now, I'd much rather just have a conversation with our audience, whether it's the audience that's watching us on YouTube, on Facebook Live, on iTunes. I want to have a conversation with you about mitigation and sentence mitigation. As somebody who has been charged with a crime, we've really got to be thinking about the challenges that we're facing. We've really got to be thinking about how the world sees us. We've really got to be thinking about where am I at this particular stage in my journey. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm remembering a theory from social science. It was called Johari's window. And it talked about these 4 different windows of perception. And one of them is how we see ourselves and versus how other people see us. That's one of the windows in this quadrant. Another window is how other people see us and think of us. But how is that different? What do we know about what other people see us that we don't know? Okay? Like the authorities, I look at myself one way, but a prosecutor is looking at me a fundamentally different way. And there are things that the prosecutor knows about me that I don't know that he knows. There are things that I know about me that the prosecutor doesn't know. There are things that I think everybody knows about me. There are things that I don't know about myself and that other people don't know about me. There's just so many perceptions and ways to understand how the world works and how perceptions are made that we have to understand that and accept that. That's the first step, is to understand there are going to be different perceptions. But the next step is to ask, well, what can I do with the time, the energy, the resources that I have to influence perceptions? That's what a mitigation strategy is all about. And you can't outsource this. You cannot outsource this to a lawyer who is really analyzing the facts of your case and analyzing case law and analyzing constitutional issues and analyzing whether the strength of the prosecution's case. Your lawyer is not going to have the time or the energy or the bandwidth to truly get to know who you are as a defendant. So it's your job as a defendant to be thinking about this. Okay, I get the playing field. What can I do, given the resources and the time that I have, to change the way that other people see me? And there's a lot that you can do. And that's one of the reasons I encourage you, learn as much as you possibly can. And it doesn't matter to me what kind of offense you're facing. If you've got a DWI, if you're charged with driving under the influence and you're going to stand before a judge, you should be thinking about mitigation plans. You should be thinking about, what can I do to change the outcome of that proceeding? You should be thinking about, what record can I build to help the judge see that this was an aberrational conduct or some type of influence led me here, or this is what I have learned from the process. The more that you invest in that, the stronger you are going to be able to influence the proceeding itself. And there are a lot of things that you can be doing. But you've got to start by accepting responsibility that it's your job to invest, your job to build this sentence mitigation strategy. Now, we have courses that show people how to do it, but at the end of the day, the person either has to create the record, build a solid record, or a person has to hire somebody who can help him architect the plan, architect the strategy. Or somebody should go through a course and just learn, well, what are some of the different things that I can do? Sometimes a defense attorney won't really talk about this. The defense attorney won't be thinking this strategically. The defense attorney may just want to push you through the process. But your job is to position yourself for the lowest possible sentence. If you truly want the lowest possible sentence, then you've got to be thinking about, what can I do to influence the stakeholders? What can I do even to influence my defense attorney? How am I going to help my defense attorney understand more about who I am and what I have done so that that defense attorney will advocate for me in the best possible way? What steps can I take to influence other stakeholders in the proceeding? Whether those stakeholders may be starting out with a probation officer who is going to take a look at your story and document your story and very likely rely upon the prosecutor's version of events. The prosecutor has a lot of resources available that you don't have because the prosecutor's been working on your case a lot longer than you've been thinking about this. The prosecutor has the benefit of, if it's a white-collar crime, for example, the prosecutor has the benefit of whatever investigators at the Securities and Exchange Commission or the FBI or the FTC or the FDA or one of these other alphabet agencies have gathered all this evidence that they've invested hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, sometimes thousands of hours, to gather evidence to get to know you and build a case against you. And that's what they are really focused on doing, is securing their case. I got a lot of exposure to civil litigation when the Federal Trade Commission sued me because of a bad investment I made. And I recognized, wow, what they initially were suing a developer that I had invested in. And because I was invested in the case, I got to see all of their work. And they investigated him for 2 years, doing mock phone calls with his sales staff and talking with his consumers and assessing all of his advertisements and all of the copy that they could do. And then they wove that into this narrative to make it look as if he were calculating this scheme to deceive people. And they built a very powerful case, one that I did not agree with, one that I did not know, but it didn't matter what I thought. All that I could see from this is that this is the way a case gets built. Okay? And if it's a more traditional criminal case, like a drug case or a bribery case or something along those lines, the government is also going to have a massive amount of evidence, including wiretapped evidence and so on and so forth. And if the defendant doesn't do something about it, the only record that is going to exist, or an extensive record that is going to exist, is all of that evidence that investigators have put together. So the question is, what evidence are you going to gather? What type of case are you going to make to help the judge see you from a different perspective? And if you don't know how to do that, then you need to hire somebody who does. And you need to have it almost like a coaching call. And so let's talk about, what does an effective sentence mitigation strategy look like? How much time are you willing to invest to build your sentence mitigation strategy? How much in the way of resources can you build? And the only limitation is your creativity and your ability to put it together. Like, if I had all of the resources at the beginning of my sentence or before I got sentenced that I had when I got out of prison, I wouldn't have gotten a 45-year sentence. I wouldn't have been starting my journey inside of a high security penitentiary, because I would have had an effective sentence mitigation plan that would have influenced the way that stakeholders saw me. And when I say stakeholders, I mean everybody in the system, starting with perhaps my defense attorney, following perhaps with a probation officer who's going to write a pre-sentence investigation report, continuing with the prosecutor and the investigators that are looking at me, continuing with the judge who is going to assess me, continuing with the Bureau of Prisons who is going to assess and determine where do I serve my sentence, going on with the case manager who is going to assess me while I'm going through the process, continuing with the people who are going to make a decision on whether I am going to be released to home confinement or to the community, continuing with the people who are going to supervise me in the community, and then continuing with how I'm going to build a case to get off of supervised release early, and continuing with the level of liberty that I'm going to have while I'm on supervised release, and continuing with the business career that I want to build after all this is over. the sooner you start thinking about this mitigation plan, the stronger you become in building an effective sentence mitigation strategy. The challenge is most people don't think about it until they're way on the other side of the journey. I mean, I was in jail for 26 years, and I can't tell you how many people I had to mentor inside that were only giving this ridiculous statement about, I'm going to start preparing for this when I get out. That's like I mean, let's talk in terms of business, right? You may be listening to this podcast, and you may be a white collar guy who's successful. And I mean, we have a friend and a client who was the CEO of a very successful, one of the biggest 3 brands of a consumer product company. And I don't want to use his name, but he was a CEO of a consumer product company that generated billions of dollars in revenues. And he got indicted. And he got indicted for a white collar crime. And from his perspective, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't violate the law. It's certainly not with his intent. He was doing business in the manner of the way that the business community wanted him to do business, but he didn't intend to violate any laws. And in his mind, he had a very solid concept of why the government's case was wrong. But at the stage of the game when we started working with him, it really didn't matter what he thought. What mattered is that a jury convicted him. It's the same thing that happened to me. And now he's got a lot of stakeholders down the road that are going to have an enormous influence on this person's life. A good sentence mitigation strategy will take all of that into account. What are the different things that he could do? Well, he could do something like I'm doing right now. You can start a podcast. You can start putting your content out there and letting people see, hear, listen to it and what's happening. Well, people are making a judgment. And we're going to sink or swim based on the evidence that we create. But if we don't create enough evidence to counterbalance what the other side is presenting, you've got a very difficult challenge of evening the playing field. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I would challenge any of you. Google my name. Google the name Michael Santos and see what comes up. I completely dominate all 10 pages of Google because of all the content that I produce. And I've been producing that content for a long time. And nobody's going to look at that and even find the press releases that were out there when I got in trouble, because I produced so much content that mitigates that statement. It mitigates, it lessens, and it becomes more relevant and more powerful. And right now you see me creating this content on an iTunes podcast. You see me creating this content on a YouTube channel. You see me creating this content on a Facebook page. You see me reposting this content on blogs that I write where I link back to it, giving it more authority. You see all of this interconnected web of content that people see. You see me publishing books on Amazon. You'll see me speaking publicly. You'll see me everywhere. And in this process, the algorithms of the internet, whether it's Facebook or Amazon or Google or LinkedIn or any of these algorithms, they're hearing my voice. They're picking up the words that I write. They are seeing the videos that I produce. They're seeing what other people say about it. And then it's feeding back into the system. And guess what? It's counterbalancing what other people see. I'm not going to say it's all good, but I'm going to say it's all authentic. And that is the way, the death knell that we bring to a prosecutor's case. Because a prosecutor wants to paint you as nothing more than the product of the crime. That's what the prosecutor wants to do, okay? Your job is to counterbalance that. And your job is to begin by thinking about all the people that you are going to encounter in the future that are going to have a different say about you. And you've got to assess, well, who's going to help me architect that plan? Is it going to be my lawyer? You think that through. How much time is your lawyer really going to give to your case? And do you really want your lawyer thinking about your future mitigation strategies? Or do you want to do it with perhaps a reputation management coach, or perhaps somebody who has been through this path and emerged successfully? Do you want to do it with somebody who can give you insight into all the ways that you can do it yourself? Or do you want to hire somebody, a team of people that can produce it all for you? These are the decisions that we all have to make when we are architecting a mitigation strategy. So I would like you to, just don't listen to what I say, watch what I do, and look at our team, what our team does. Then say, is that the team that I want to bring on to help me? And if it is, then reach out to my partner, reach out to us. We're really easy to find. Okay. Download any of our books. Look us up on every platform. See if we're authentic. See if we're plagiarizing somebody else's work, or if we're people who truly did it. Because there's going to be a lot of people that imitate us. There's going to be a lot of people that mock us. There's going to be a lot of people, that try to steal our stuff. You've got to determine, do you want to deal with somebody who's authentic and truly done it? Do you want a team that can advise you on sentence mitigation strategies? Do you want to do it yourself? Because you can absolutely do it yourself. But you got to be willing to do the work. If you want to influence how your pre-sentence investigation report turns out, you got to understand it. If you want to influence how the judge sees you, you got to understand, how am I going to build a record? If you want to understand how all the stakeholders down the line are going to look at me, you've got to craft a plan. Because what you really want is that all of these stakeholders don't only consider what the prosecutors have said about you. You want them to see you in the same way that people that know, like, and trust you. And how are you going to do it? Well, one strategy that you're going to use is you're going to document your story. That's going to be one strategy of a sentence mitigation plan. And you can document your story in a number of ways, but it had better be well thought out, it had better be well architected, and it had better be well executed. Number two, you're going to want to get the people who know you best, that know about your character, to testify or provide sworn statements that testify to what you've done in the community, why they see you as a good human being. And you've got to architect and craft that plan. And there are a lot of ways that you can do it. Now, I can tell you, it's not easy to go out into the world and say, you can get your sister to write a letter for you. You can get your mom to say, my son's a good boy. But you've got to have this being a part of your well-architected strategy. And you can do it yourself. 3, you can think about, what type of major, more comprehensive mitigation efforts can I make? And that is going to require some real engineering and thinking. And then it's going to require execution. And we love to help people craft those plans. You could look at some cases. In fact, on our blog, one of our blogs, we tell the case of, I'll use his name because it's in the media, but Casperson. He is a guy that he was, graduated from the Groton School, I think it's in Connecticut. Then he went to, I believe, Princeton undergrad, Harvard Law, built a huge financial services firm. I think it was either a hedge fund or private equity. Raised $40 million in oversaw $40 million of assets under management, or maybe oversaw hundreds of millions. But he was involved in a fraud that resulted in the loss of $40 million. It was clear deception. Nobody disputed that. He violated the trust of the people who gave him money. Prosecutors wanted to give him 16 years. But the strategies that we are talking about right here, effective sentence mitigation strategies, resulted in him making a case where the judge saw that it served nobody's interest to sentence this man to 16 years, where the judge saw that it was much more appropriate to give him a 4-year sentence. Now, he's out in the community right now, doing deals, making his life, and he served his time in prison, and he's put this behind him. Why did he do that? because he had an effective sentence mitigation strategy, just like you should have if you've come into the crosshairs of the criminal justice system. And if you're going to create one, download our book. It's free. Prepare What Defendants Need to Know About Court, Sentencing, and Prison. Learn everything that you can. If you don't have time to read, tune into the podcast while you're driving. Determine if this makes sense for you, and then figure out, how am I going to do this? And if you want to learn more, really quite simple, visit any of our brands. We have 3 brands. I've spoken about them before. Our premier brand is White Collar Advice, which my partner Justin Paperny runs. And that is, a great service where you get to talk with Justin, and in some cases, I'll talk with you too. But the truth is, my job is really in a different realm. It's creating all this content for our other brands, like Prison Professors. This is where we provide free content to help as many people as possible understand what they can do to become successful through this journey, including sentence mitigation. And we also have resilientcourses.com, where we create these digital courses for people to download and work their way through and make it happen. My recommendation to you is invest your time first. Then, if you've got money, figure out how much money to deploy. You don't have to invest any money. I produce all this for free, but you do have to do the work. You can't fake it. So you want to build an effective sentence mitigation strategy, you can start by reading or listening, and then you can decide, do I have the skill set to do it myself? If I don't, find a resource, find a coach that can help you get through it. And we've got tools that will help you. You can send an email, team@prisonprofessors.com. You can reach us by phone, text or phone call, 949-205-6056. We're here to help. Tune into our next podcast at Prison Professors. Watch us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channels. Be a part of our community and make it happen. Thank you. And that is how I record an audio podcast. Now I come here and I just hit stop. I'm going to mix this later. It requires a little complicated effort to do some of the mixing on this. But you see, I just did it all in one take. And by doing it all in one take, I was able to advance the ball on this project of what I'm trying to accomplish. So I want you to be thinking about, how can you be advancing the ball in your life as well. So that is it for today. I filmed this on April the 15th, 2020. This was chapter 6 you've just listened to of Prepare What Defendants Need to Know About Sentence Mitigation. The book is called Prepare What Defendants Need to Know About Court, Sentencing, and Prison. Got a lot of books. They're available on all of our websites. But if you don't have time to read, check it out here on YouTube. But you can help us out by subscribing to our channel and leaving a review if you find us helpful. And if you want to reach out, you've got all the ways. You can see how easily that is to do. Thanks so much for your time.